I doubled the monthly revenue of my business in literally just 60 days, and it was all thanks to having an appointment setter. So in today's video, I'll be sharing with you exactly step by step how you can find the best appointment setter talent, the best way to interview them so that you can evaluate their skill level and their fit, and even how you can optimize and set up their day-to-day workflow so that they are absolutely crushing it for you and your sales team. So first off, why do you even need an appointment setter? Well, I want to give you a quick story. Back in 2020, when I had first started my company, things were going fairly well in terms of sales, but the reality was I was burning out. I would wake up at 8 a.m. and typically work until midnight with mostly just breaks for the bathroom and eating food. And the biggest culprit for this is that primarily I was spending 20 to 40 hours a week on just booking meetings and setting up appointments for myself. And keep in mind, I was still doing everything else in the organization, whether it was fulfilling for clients or even accounting and finances. So more or less, whatever hat there was, I was wearing all of them. And don't get me wrong, business development and booking meetings is the lifeblood of your business. It's incredibly important, but if you're spending that much time on just that facet of business alone, you're probably not able to progress your company strategically, improve your products, make yourself more competitive. And that's when I realized I needed to hire an appointment setter. So what is an appointment setter? The simplest way I can put it is that it's someone whose full-time job is simply dedicated to generating you sales appointments with potential clients. In software, they typically call them SDRs or BDRs. That would stand for sales development representative or a business development representative. But at the end of the day, whether you call them an appointment setter or an SDR or a BDR, they fulfill the same role, which is to fill your pipeline, to generate you lots of sales calls. And down the line, whether or not you're closing it yourself or maybe you have a team of closers, you've essentially utilized these setters to offload the responsibility that comes with generating client calls. So having a setter that could actually take all of this responsibility off my plate essentially saved me those 20 to 40 hours. Not only that, because they're working on this role full time, we were able to book even more sales calls than what I was able to do myself. So if you're spending too much of your own time prospecting, the next hire that you need to make and the most strategically important decision that you can have right now is to delegate that specific activity. Realizing this, though, was only the start. Putting this into action is a lot more complex than just realizing you need an appointment setter. So in today's conversation, I'll be sharing with you all the mistakes that I made, which led to my setter teams failing at first, as well as all the things that I did correctly that allow my setter team today to be incredibly profitable. So the first step, surprisingly, is not about hiring at all. I know, it's kind of weird. But the first thing that you actually want to do is to ensure that your organization is ready to hire their first setter or SDR. Because not every business is ready to bring on someone who's fully dedicated into sales. For example, if you're a business that is not really generating much monthly revenue and you simply don't have a lot of excess cash flow in the bank, you literally cannot afford to bring on this talent. Because at the end of the day, you still need to pay them every single month. And if you can't, then they're not going to stick around for very long and you're back to square one, except you've wasted a ton of time trying to find this person. Now, another thing that you need to make sure you're prepared for when a setter comes in is lead flow. Because let's say your setter arrives on day one and they obviously want to call some people. They want to DM some people in social media. If you literally have no list of leads to give to them, then who are they going to even try to book meetings with? So your backend infrastructure needs to be set up in a way where you already have leads and contacts that they're ready to be speaking with. And if they don't have that, you're simply not going to be able to provide the setters what they need in order to succeed. Another element that I'm going to mention is simply just your mentality. Are you ready to be a manager? Because if you've never led a sales team before, if you still have these tendencies of micromanaging and thinking that you know best and that you need to have your hand in the honeypot for literally everything, I hate to break it to you, but control freaks tend to not be very good when it comes to management and building out these teams. So you got to make sure that you're mentally ready to maybe separate yourself and give up a little bit of control when it comes to your operations. And that way you can allow the salesperson to do their job in the most effective way possible. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, we want to move on to step 2, which is preparing in advance for your setter's arrival. So the reality is you can't just pick up a random dude off the street and tell them, all right, so get me some clients. Of course, they're going to be like, all right, so what do I do? And if your answer is, figure it out, man, that's not going to end very well. Instead, what you want to do is prepare in advance for their arrival. So what this means is you build out a proper onboarding process for your setter. This includes all the scripts fully documented somewhere, the softwares they're going to be utilizing on the day-to-day to make their workflow more efficient. Even just an overview of your products and your customers so that your setter understands who they're selling to and what they're selling, that's so critical. And this way, when your setter comes in, they'll be 100% prepared to actually succeed in the role, and they don't need to be constantly improvising or asking you, hey, give me help, I need assistance. Because obviously you're a busy business owner and you're not going to have the time to be constantly dealing with babysitting them. Alrighty, step 3. We finally have arrived to the hiring stage. Now, there's several components here, and I'm just going to list them out quickly, but I'll break them down more in depth one by one. The first component is you want to source your candidates. The second is you want to then interview and vet the candidates for fit. And the third component is then you want to onboard and trial those candidates so that they can prepare for long-term success. So I'll be releasing a separate video that'll go even deeper into the hiring process, because that in and of itself could be an hour-long explanation if I'm being honest. Today we'll keep it somewhat simple. So the first method that I want to share with you about is utilizing Facebook groups. There's actually a lot of Facebook groups out there which are specifically built for high-ticket salespeople, whether it be closers or setters. And it's a great community for salespeople in general to just meet other salespeople, to network, to learn skills, but also to connect with companies that are looking to hire. I actually run one of these Facebook groups myself, but there are many. And you can find them by just running a simple search on Facebook with high-ticket closers or appointment setters. Remote sales is another one. And typically what I'll do is I'll just make a post advertising that I'm looking for sales talent. I'll share a little bit of a description of what they're selling, what they'll be potentially making. And normally a ton of talent will just comment on that post, and then I can have one of my virtual assistants to reach out to them in the DMs with an application. Now, another method that I like is to use a centralized job board, such as Workable. Workable is especially cool because it allows you to make one job listing, but it'll cross-post that same listing to like another 100 job boards around the internet, whether that be Indeed or LinkedIn. And this is amazing because now, instead of you needing to do this manually for all of these different job boards, you can just do it one time. Let's be real. Who's got the time to actually go and post a bunch of different job listings to a dozen or so websites?
Ain't nobody got time for that.
As well, what Workable allows you to do is track all the candidates that are in your recruiting pipeline. Think about it almost like a CRM, but for your recruiting side of things. So having all of these candidates can get a bit confusing. To be able to track them all by stage and to take notes on where they are in the process is super, super helpful. So I would recommend, whether or not you're using Workable or another software, having some sort of centralized aggregator is a game changer. Now, if you are curious about Workable, since I use it myself, I also have provided a link below. Obviously, I get a little bit of a cut, but it's a tool that's really, really helpful. And by all means, check it out if you want. Now, let's just pretend that you've gotten a ton of applicants now. What do you do? So step 4 is to vet and interview the candidates. Because the truth is, the majority of the candidates who've applied are probably not going to be great fits. So what are you looking for when it comes to a candidate? Well, a couple quick traits off the top of my head are they're very coachable. Of course, we're looking for people with a proven track record, preferably in sales, but if not in sales, maybe in some other venture or career path that they've chosen. Definitely communication skills are a must, but attention to detail as well, since there's a lot of not sexy things that need to be done when it comes to sales in regards to tracking and following up. And if people are not really paying attention to those finer details, they're probably not going to succeed. And finally, I would say just passion, because sales is a bit of a grind. A lot of people flame out because they expect sales is going to generate a ton of money, and they realize it's way more difficult than they initially thought, and they just quit. So is someone truly interested in sales and psychology? If not, I tend to stay away. Now, in order to find out whether or not this is the correct person for the job, I typically like to run it via 2 stages of interviews. The first interview is much more behavioral in nature. I just want to see whether or not our personalities connect. I want to hear from them about their previous roles, whether or not they were hitting quota at their prior organization. Are they curious about sales, that they read books and listen to podcasts? And one of the things that I like to do in that first interview is just ask them, do you have any questions for me? Salespeople should be inherently curious, and if they don't even have any questions for me, if they're not asking anything, then realistically, are they gonna do a good job asking the prospect good questions? Probably not. So I'm looking at all of these different things, and usually this is a 15 to 25-minute interview. I actually have a sales interview script that contains a ton of the questions that I like to ask, so if you want that, by the way, just go to the description box below, click on the link, and you can download it for yourself. Now, typically, around 10 to 25% of those first interviewees will be impressive enough that you want to move them on to the next stage. And the next stage is the role play interview. And I personally love doing role plays because it essentially puts the candidate directly in a sales scenario where they can show you their real sales skills. Meaning, can they overcome objections? Do they know how to ask discovery questions? Are they able to provide a pitch in a highly tailored way to the prospect? So more or less, we just put them in a scenario.
Sell me this pen.
And we just say, hey, sell us this thing. And we'll just see how they react. Of course, it's a stressful environment, so it's also a great way to test out their composure. Are they going to freak out and have a little bit of a meltdown, or are they going to stay composed and perform well even if they make a mistake or two? Now, the cool thing about the role play is that we aren't judging them just on one scenario. Because the other thing that we're trying to test as well with the role play outside of sales skills is their ability to take feedback and accept coaching. Because after their first role play, we'll normally say, hey, here are the things you did well on, but here are the things that you could probably improve on. Now, let's try this role play again and see if you're able to take that feedback and improve. And the ones who take it very personally and they're unable to actually take that feedback and make their second round better, of course, they're not going to last. But if you have someone who even performs poorly in the first role play, but they're able to take that feedback to heart and they're able to improve massively, that's someone that we want on our team. So the role play stage for me is so critical in evaluating whether or not a candidate is going to last the test of time. And finally, the last step is to onboard. And surprisingly, this doesn't actually mean you just take whoever went through those interview rounds and you give them a signed contract. Because the truth is, some people are just great at interviews and are not very good at working in real life. And on the flip side, I can say from firsthand experience, I've interviewed people who I was pretty skeptical about, but I thought, you know what, they're good enough, I'll give them a chance, and they were amazing once they actually got into the role. So if you want to avoid hiring these wolf in sheep's clothing, the people who are not quite what they appear to be, what I highly recommend is you do what I call a trial.
I demand a trial by combat.
Nope, not that one. A trial is simply training your new rep and having them truly work for you inside your organization for a week or two, and seeing the way in which they'd really perform, how they would coordinate and cooperate with your team. Are they generating early successful numbers? There's so many qualitative and quantitative things that you could be getting from actually seeing them work in your organization that you wouldn't get from just interviewing them, that I do this every single time I hire pretty much any role, but in particular, a sales-oriented role, I definitely would do this every single time. Now, I will admit that so far we've only spoken about the things you do prior to hiring your setter as well as the way in which you hire your setter. There's a lot more that goes into your long-term setter team success when it comes to management, when it comes to sales training, when it comes to just ongoing protocols. So if you are actually trying to learn a bit more about that side of things, I actually have this other video here which goes into the primary things that cause your sales reps to fail and how you can avoid them. So please just check it out. That's pretty much it. If you actually are looking to get some help when it comes to your own sales and marketing process, whether that's hiring or building campaigns, I've actually worked with over 120 plus companies when it comes to improving some of these areas of their business. And if you want to just book a call with me, you can actually find my calendar link in the description box below, and we can have that quick conversation. If you haven't already liked, commented, and subscribed, please do. This is a brand new channel, and it would really help me out. And it'll keep you notified of amazing new content that is upcoming as well, that'll help you put your sales on rocket boosters. So with that being said, have a good one, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.